Hi, I'm Cutler Robinson with Predictive Agronomics, and I'm meeting today with Matt Minnich from Rocky Point Golf Course. Matt, how are you doing?
I'm good, Cutler. How are you?
Good. So,
Great.
give me a little bit of a rundown about your role and your type of golf course.
So I'm the superintendent at Rocky Point Golf Course. I've been in that position since 2018. We are on the western shore of the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland, just east of Baltimore. We have 55-year-old push-up greens, bent Poa mix, and predominantly ryegrass fairways and tees on native clay soil.
So, native clay soil on your fairways, your greens, did you say push up 55 year
Yes.
old?
Yeah.
So, pretty heavy soil. They drain surface drainage or good internal drainage or typical
A
for
handful of our
push-ups.
greens have internal drainage that's been added, but for the most part, just natural. They actually they do pretty well drainage wise. Obviously, with top dressing and everything over the years, it's kind of changed a little bit of the structure itself, but no, they do well.
So, how about any special challenges your golf course? You get a lot of play.
We do get a lot of play. The past 3 seasons, we've had over 50,000 rounds each of those. So it's busy, a lot of foot traffic, a lot of cart traffic. Something we also face too is humidity challenges, low elevation, especially in the summer, like July through early September. The humidity is a bear there, unless we get
So,
nice strong cold fronts.
50,000 rounds, you're just outside Baltimore. How many acres of fairways do you have?
We have 27 acres of fairways.
So it's a lot of play on not a tremendous amount of acreage. Is that
Right,
right? How about
right.
your greens? What size are your greens?
Just over 4 acres.
Okay, so
Good,
there is
good size greens.
good
Yeah,
size to those.
yeah.
So tell me about your experience with Predicting Seven and how what made you get started with it in the first place?
Um, I felt like before Predict N, it felt like I was kind of chasing our turf grass all the time, if that makes sense to you. Regulators, fungicides, things like that. A rain event comes through, and your whole plan basically pretty much goes up in smoke. You feel bad that you weren't able to get product out that you really wanted to. So kind of that unease, I guess, in that regard. The interesting thing I thought about Predict N was, it's not really a one size fits all approach to it. I had used floor team products prior to starting with Predict N, but just the preciseness of the modeling itself and everything, like it's taking your weather data into effect, it's taking your soil analysis into effect, and using the algorithms, it formulates, a result that is essentially yours. It was definitely unique, kind of in our industry. Like, it's not just a pack that shows up, and these products are going to work for you, they're going to work for everybody else in the state too. So that was a big selling point too, to me. And I think also the ability to kind of be flexible with it, as you're learning it. It's a big philosophical change, in terms of what we've known in the turfgrass industry versus what we're learning moving forward. So I think the ability for you to kind of, take your time with it and see the results as they come, I think that's very important too.
Well, Predicting had Seven's taken on a life of its own since we first came up with the idea and started it, and guys started using it. But like on fairways and large acreage, you know, it's turned into this method of controlling growth, right? So if you have the control of the growth of your grass and it's a large acreage, then you can control your staff, you can control your uh, blowing and all of these things. But it also leads to a healthier plant, right? If it's not slammed, the brakes aren't slammed on with heavy growth regulator applications. The plant just seems to be healthier if it's just getting what it needs. So I'm looking at some of your data that you were willing to share, and thanks for doing this.
Sure.
On 2019, I guess it's before you started predicting seven, and
Correct. That's before we started predicting on any playing surface.
then 2024 is after 4 years
That
of
was
it. So you had the beta version, is that correct?
that's correct. Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
so you dealt with that. Thanks for your patience with all that. Um, so walk me through what this means to you. I'm showing some of the man hours on fairways, on the sprayers, the greens mowing, the green spraying, tee mowing. What did this, what does this mean to your operation when you can get this sort of reductions in man hours?
I mean, obviously, it's great for our labor that we're able to reallocate those hours elsewhere, that we typically be spending doing these practices. And, really to me, that's kind of the beauty of Predict N is, you'd think if you reduced your fairway mowing or greens mowing by 100 hours that, you may be sacrificing something in terms of the performance of the turf or something like that. But it's actually the opposite, you know, reallocating those hours and making the health of your turf grass, better is a win-win in my book. For me personally, at a public facility that does that amount of rounds, time is of the essence. 3 or 4 hours each morning until the course is, pretty much packed, and then we're kind of in a tight spot as far as getting around doing anything what we want to do on the course. So just being able to kind of minimize those hours without sacrificing turf health or anything like that has been vitally important for us. And, it's a benefit to the golfers as well. That's another side of it that, limited disturbance, we're not aerifying like we used to. We're not out there blowing clippings all the time around play, things like that. So I mean I think it's a benefit to everybody, really.
Well, it's this is a great case study of what's possible, right? That we can give the plant what it needs at the amount that it needs based on our spray interval so that it grows at the pace we want. Because any growth that's more than it needs to handle the traffic isn't necessary growth, right? Unless there's some sort of extenuating circumstances like vandalism or something. But
Right.
just having the grass grow beyond what it needs to do to recover doesn't make any sense. So, and then giving the plant what it actually needs, giving it more than what it needs doesn't seem to make sense. And it's just this idea of how do we get to where we can give it exactly what it needs. What I don't see on here are blowers. Was blowing man hours maybe you didn't track or you tracked it and it wasn't a reduction or wasn't a change? Or did you not blow as much? What do you see with blowing?
We definitely didn't blow as much. The software program that we use, Advanced Scoreboard Task Tracker for
Task tracker.
tracking our
Excellent.
labor. So we had, in our groups, we have greens, tees, fairways, and each of those tasks below. Blowing is a part of those tasks, but I hadn't broken it down like blow clippings versus blow leaves versus that. So obviously the hours are definitely reduced when it comes to blowing clippings, but as far as making that, a separate
Yeah.
segment of these hours, it really would have
No, it's
skewed it a little bit as far as our fall practices.
yeah, I totally understand. But there's, so that's the cost, like when we think of the game of golf and keeping the costs down to attract more players. And so you're a municipality, is that correct? Would you call that?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you serve your community with with a great recreational opportunity, and it's great if your community has a cost-effective place to go play golf, enjoy their day, right?
Sure.
So
Absolutely.
when we're looking at the good of the game of golf and what can we do to help the whole the big picture, attract more golfers, help their enjoyment, minimizing inputs, and is one of the things without sacrificing quality. So
Right.
I look on here and I see less mowing, less, I hear less blowing. So that means less traffic, right? Less traffic on the fairways is good. T, same with greens. So more time being allocated maybe to pinpoint water irrigation is better, maybe because you have
Sure.
more
Yeah.
staff.
Yeah. Yeah. More of an emphasis for us on, having time to hand water certain areas of fairways and, you know, sometimes more importantly, keep water off of other areas.
So you have your greens program on here or your greens on here. What percentage of now I looked on your model, you used the bent grass model, is that correct? And you're
Correct.
above 125 mowing height setting, right?
We are.
So
Yeah.
your rates are fairly low on the products and the cost of the program isn't that expensive, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So POA, did you have what percentage of POA did you have in 2019 on your greens, and what do you see here 4 or 5 years later?
On average in 2019, I would say we were somewhere in the 60-40 bent grass majority.
Okay,
2024, I would say it's at least 80% bent grass on most greens. This season, we'll probably have three or four greens that don't have a speck of POA on them. And that's, you know,
that's not
without
with
really,
no POA
go ahead.
cure.
No, no,
So
no, yeah, no POA regulators, really.
Matt, we haven't talked about this that much before about POA and on the bentgrass model, but we're kind of seeing this happen across the board. The POA doesn't like what the bentgrass model provides. It's not enough.
We
What
are
did you,
seeing that as well.
okay, but how about that transition? It's been a slow, like you say, from 60-40 to 80-20, would you say it's been a slow and like your golfers weren't freaked out by it?
Oh no, no. It's yeah, I mean, five, probably 10% at the most on a season to season basis. And
Wow.
the interesting thing is like high traffic areas, like walk-on areas of greens that typically were, predominantly POA. Like you can really see a definite transition in those in bent grass taking over, which is it's just wild to me because I had never seen anything like that before, before this model. So it's
Well,
definitely been, a natural change. And like I think one of the important things to us too is that the POA looks, healthy during this process at
okay.
all times of the year. But it's just not as aggressive as the bent grass is using the bent grass model to
Mhm.
predict in.
It's we're seeing that pretty consistently. Like when Predicting came out, it was not really, we didn't have any expectation that would be the case. Um, well, as I scroll through these man hours and I look at, you save about 300 man hours, so it's about 2,000 man hours for a person. So this is pretty significant amount of reduction in labor. It, that's so all of this, you feel like your golf course is in better condition now than it was in 2019?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a big deal. And this is with less labor going into these practices.
Right.
The other
Yeah.
thing, took the liberty to look at some of your soil tests, and I see that your organic matter numbers. Let's look at your fairways, or we'll look at this fairway, and you have a release. This E&R data is so cool, isn't it? It's like if without this data, it's like I don't know how. Of course, Predictin would never work without this analytic.
Right. No, it's truly eye-opening when you see it in front of you.
It really is. And the beauty of it is it's accurate. And the reason we know how accurate it is because it works the same way everywhere. We have models in Oklahoma, Michigan, Indiana, all over the place. It works the same way everywhere. It's basically the math takes over. And if the analink wasn't really good, the model wouldn't be as accurate. So anyway, you look at this and you go, oh my goodness, any granular application that was made that would release in July would be no good, right? Is that something that you all used to do, or did you always do foliar applications on your fairways?
We used to apply granular fertilizer in the saddle season, spring and fall. This will be the fourth season that we stopped that practice
So
and have essentially only applied foliar.
no more bulk nitrogen applications, right? So
No,
there's savings there too. Uh,
right? Yep.
then the other way to look at this too is if you were to buy 1.8 pounds of nitrogen per thousand square feet, what would that cost?
Ooh.
Right?
Yeah,
Like if it was a UF, I mean, it'd be, $300 an acre or something like this, that
yeah,
you're actually letting this math and the math of the algorithm use this to your benefit. So
right.
it's like you have this resource that you didn't necessarily buy it, you inherited it, but
Yeah,
it's there and it's being used. And so great work. So I was going to scroll down. Your greens, let's see, your greens look more traditional for push-up green.
yeah.
The ENR numbers are still high, but maybe not as bad as your fairways. But did take the liberty to look on your greens to see what they were like just in the last year. You had the last test was in July was 1.8% of organic, and this is with the Analink. So it went down to 2.2. So when you're from 2.2, so your organics
Right.
coming down in your greens, do you see it in how they react?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, they're definitely more resilient, firmer, faster without, the traditional effort of trying to remove, 20% of your surface on the greens year to year.
What's your cultural practices like now compared to 5 years ago?
Much less invasive, disruptive, I would say. Right now, our core focus agronomically is deep tining, venting throughout the summer season. And, when we do hollow tine aerify, it's typically just a quarter-inch tine on very tight spacing. So really it's only about 4 or 5% of of removal, each time we do it. And the beauty of it is, especially in late summer when we aerify 4 or 5 days later, it's essentially, recovered for play. I mean, it's a great thing for the golfing public as well.
That brings us back to this whole, the big picture is, the game of golf is great, and what can we do for the game? Less aeration is kind of good for everybody, isn't it?
Yeah.
So good work there. I guess your golfers would be freaked out if you came back in with 5/8 inch hollow tines in September, right?
It'd
Yeah,
be a shock to the system for them.
yeah.
Yeah.
We still see some of it, but a lot less than we used to. So,
Yeah.
how about your tees? Do you get so like on? Do you run it on the tees? You run the predictants on your tees, or do you use a fairway program on the tees?
We've kind of taken to running the fairway program on the tees, as in that they're similar enough that the program works for us.
How about things like, well, like on your fairways, divot recovery? Like so. I'm assuming your nitrogen application rates are much lower than they used to be for the
Right.
angle. But what are you seeing in recovery from divots and traffic on fairways?
Much better, especially with traffic. That used to be a pretty big problem for us in the summer, just with the amount of play. A lot of afternoon play too, since COVID. I mean, our tee sheets have been full sun up to sundown, really. So especially in those afternoon hours with car traffic, it's always been a difficult thing for us to control. But just a lot more resiliency in terms of the turf grass since, and it's just been night and day, especially in the health of our fairways, since using the model.
Well, ryegrass fairways, 27 acres, 50,000 rounds doesn't sound like a lot of fun in the transition zone. Um, so gray leaf spot, I'm sure you still treat for gray leaf spot, of course, right?
Right. Yeah.
But your fairways ryegrass in July, gosh, only you get 200 rounds in a day, right? Seems to
Yeah.
hold up okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
absolutely. I mean, in terms of disease pressure, just in using this model. I feel like it's gone down on all the surfaces that we use it on drastically. We used to get white tea patch pretty often
Okay.
in the spring on our putting greens, and since using the model, we haven't really seen it at all on any greens, and that was always a big thing for us in the spring because it's such a visually sensitive, disease for the golfers and everything. And but now it's really all the really prevalent diseases in our region have kind of, been quelled to a point with using the model. So it's been great in that regard too.
How about you? What would you say to your old self before you, or another superintendent, or maybe you even talk to other superintendents? What do you say about Predictin 7? What, like, to talk to a guy about that maybe has trepidation about considering it or anything like that? What sort of advice would you offer?
I was kind of in their boat too. Like I naturally I'm the kind of person that kind of likes to question things. So, I came at it, with a realistic expectation of what I thought it could provide to me, and it's exceeded all of those expectations that I had. As far as talking to my old self or fellow superintendents, I think the best thing you can do, really, the first step is getting a turf audit and really trying to understand, how your soil's working, and and the ways that, the Analink can help you in learning, the ways that Predict N obviously can help you in terms of the health of your turf grass. So yeah, I just think, understanding that it's a process. Like we're like I think you would agree, we're still learning all throughout this. So, it's just a little bit of a philosophical shift. So
We're learning too. It's just a lot of fun. We're just trying to solve a problem, and the problem has been, you know, golf conditions are better throughout the country and probably the world than they've ever been, and superintendents are the best they've ever been. But it can always get better. And how do you get better? And one way is controlling the growth of your grass.
sure.
And it's hard. It's hard to, guys, control growth. You mentioned to me previously that you've used some PGRs, right? You used PGRs before. You've even used PGRs within the Predict N7 program. That's correct?
Correct. Yep.
So it's some guys' nitrogen release, their ENR is going to exceed, like there'll be zero. Like I'm going to guess there's times in July that you don't apply any nitrogen on your greens. Like you have a spray that goes out and it might be less than 5 thousandths of a pound in or something. Is that right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Typically July, August, that time frame, probably looking at, anywhere between 2 to 3 hundredths of a pound of nitrogen, per application.
Yeah. So it's hard to get your head around that, or other superintendents or my old self too, that the plant's getting this nitrogen from the soil. It's not like it's a low end program. It's just the exact amount of nitrogen and biostimulants it needs at the right time. So your accumulation, like what you would you say? Do you know the data on your fairways and your greens about how much N you put out per year?
I know this past season on fairways, we applied a quarter pound of nitrogen.
So there, in this discussion we have with other superintendents, they say, "Wow, that's a low end program." Well, it'd be a low end program if you weren't
If you
applying,
didn't have that
if
ENR,
you didn't
right?
have this.
Right.
So you put a quarter pound, your fairways were getting 2 pounds in, and they were getting some biostimulants at the right time at the right rate. So I'm excited for the results that you've achieved, and it's amazing the work that you and other superintendents that have 50,000 rounds. It's a tribute to you, your contribution to the game of golf, your team. It's a lot of work, ryegrass fairways and transitions. So kudos to you. It's a great work. Well, thank you so much for taking the time for the call, and I look forward to seeing you out on the road sometime soon.
Thank you, Cutler. Always great to catch up with you.
Same here, Matt. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye
Take
bye.
care.